Most important skill we have is the ability to acquire more skills, to
Right.
continuously learn,
Right.
because our industry and industries en masse are moving at such a pace that you're never going to be just able to say, got my master's degree, got my bachelor's degree, check, I'm
Right.
done. What those things gave you was a base language and a foundation to then continuously learn on top of.
Right. Hey, Meriah.
Hey,
Thanks so much for being here.
thanks for inviting me to have a beverage with you.
Of course, of course. So you have many talents. One is singing. So I'm going to get right to it. You have a gorgeous voice. I've heard you sing at like weddings and all kinds of stuff, which is really cool. Aside from being a mom, aside from being a design leader at USAA, you sing. When did you start singing?
Gosh, I've been singing since I was little.
Yeah.
And then I was in a music production company and a band for a really long time. But these days, mostly I sing in the shower, the
Right.
car, and lullabies to my little babies.
That's adorable. So what are the lullabies? What's the go-to songs?
My go-to songs are always jazz songs, whether that's
Okay.
for me or for them. So for the boys, I always sing, there's a song, I know the Nancy Wilson version of it. It's close your eyes, rest your head on my shoulder and sleep. And they
Yes.
love it.
I love it. It's amazing.
Or Willow Weep for Me, or The Nearness of You. Those
Okay.
are my kind of like,
That's awesome.
I could go on and on. Any Nancy Wilson or Ella Fitzgerald or Etta James song. Yes, check. I remember this moment when I was 16 years old, and I actually kind of broke down and cried. And it was this combination, it wasn't about singing, it was this combination of whether it was illustration or dancing or singing. I kind of just realized that he didn't cut it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that I was on this kind of steady level of progression, which was rather slow.
Right.
And suddenly I was being held to a adult bar. And your picture wasn't on the refrigerator anymore, metaphorically.
Right.
And so whatever it wasn't good enough. And that switch,
How old were you now?
I think I was about somewhere between 14 and 16.
Oh, wow.
And it was just really tangible for me.
Oh, sure.
And I was like, cute doesn't cut it anymore.
Right.
I have to nothing I do is good enough.
There could be some insecurities there. Like we actually talked about this recently, which is funny. And there's things that you go and do and you want to do and excel at, whether it's like I go to the bouldering gym downtown and it's like, well, I'm not a great climber. There's guys in there 10 times better than me. I don't even want to start. I don't want to look like an idiot, but no one gives a shit. You know what I mean? It's just climb. No one cares. Like if you fall, you're in there just having a good time. And you can apply that to a lot of like our industry and a lot of just life in general. Like you're saying, you care so much more about your failures or insecurities or what is wrong with what you're doing, or you're not as good as that person. And for the most part, you're shooting yourself in the foot before you even take a first step.
Any moment where we're concerned with what we look like, we're not doing our best. We're giving some portion of our energy to that question. And
Right.
guess what? Nobody else in the room is looking at you. Nobody else. They're thinking about what they look like.
Right.
And I think that's the thing I love about getting older is you just stop caring and kind of relax into
Right.
this. Yeah, I've got wrinkles. Yeah, I've got a baby belly. Yeah, I'm not it's not about potential anymore. When you peak early,
Mm-hmm.
or you're a prodigy at anything, there's all this pressure to be like, what's gonna become of you?
Right.
I'm just gonna become myself. The moments where we're vulnerable and sharing our insecurities and willing to have progress over perfection and, share that we're entirely human is actually the moments where we're driving the best engagement and,
Right.
Having a very real dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone just wants to bring their whole selves.
Right.
And when you try to act perfect, they don't feel like they have permission to do that. The most important skill we have is the ability to acquire more skills, to continuously learn, because our industry and industries en masse are moving at such a pace that you're never going to be just able to say, got my master's degree, got my bachelor's degree, check, I'm done. What those things gave you was a base language and a foundation to then continuously learn on top of. And so in 2007 was when I joined Frog Design.
And you were a what? D1? Or however they refer to their designers. I forgot. Entry level, mid-level.
Yeah, I was a mid-level designer.
Cool.
When I joined, I thought I was ready to be a senior because I'd led teams before, but not in their book.
Oh, I thought I was a senior well before I needed to be. You're just like, I know this design
Everybody
thing.
does.
Why am I not being paid what he's being paid or she's being paid?
But I think the thing was, they were right. I'd never done the client side of the house. And while I knew things that folks who only grow up in agencies didn't know about development and delivery, I learned so much around client management, communication, presentation, storytelling, and the core of design itself, right? Enterprise software in the mid-2000s we were doing some good things, but it wasn't demanding, the level of quality that Frog demanded.
Yeah. We are now in the transition to the USAA world.
Yeah.
So when you left Frog, why did you leave Frog? What's going on?
I loved my time at Frog. I grew so much there. I had great connections, met my husband.
Yes.
I enjoyed my time so much, but towards the end, not in the middle, between some of the clients, one of my biggest clients at Frog was Disney. I got to work with them for almost 4 years.
Wow.
We grew a team of 50, which was like one of the biggest teams that Frog had ever had.
Yeah.
We were a whole floor at one point.
That's amazing.
It was fantastic work. And when I looked towards the end of the time, I knew that was more of the type of work I wanted to do, right? That brought that consumer experience and true delivery to life. So I knew I wasn't going to go to another consultancy. Great ideas are not the hardest part.
Right.
Those are actually the easiest part. It's what it takes to actually deliver something and bring something to life in the world, not just from a software perspective, but from a management, product, alignment, executive sponsorship, all of those things is actually the hardest part. So anyway, as I was I was coming to my 8-year mark, and I said, I'm not going to be here a full decade. I know that much.
Yeah.
I was pregnant with my first child, and a client who was previously at Capital One, who had been a client of mine before, called me up and he said, I'm moving to Texas and I'm going to this company and you have to come work for me.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I don't think I want to be in financial services, but I'll have, breakfast and we can talk about your strategy and, imagine how you're setting this stuff up.
Yeah.
And so that was in spring of 2015, and then in the fall of 2015, post, baby and those things, that's when I actually joined. I think the challenge that I see, and I hear this at most large companies, when I talk to my peers who are doing this at other financial services institutions or other institutions that are large companies in general, is that it can't be anymore about the incremental value of that particular project, because as many projects as die in consulting, which is almost 90% of them, or change so much form that you don't recognize them anymore. Actually, almost that many die inside as well. So I'm a challenge on that idea of value being important, that it's delivered right away, right? Because I think that the same way your values change as you age, one of the things that's changed for me is this importance of resilience. And that, yes, many individual projects will die on the vine, but if the value of design is not necessarily just the artifacts we deliver or the products that we help create, it really is the way the business is done, then that is a much longer game. And it takes continuous pressure and retacking and approaching the problem from different angles. And it isn't a clear and linear path to success. And so I think that frustrates a lot of designers as we're in the throes of it, and my thing didn't make it to market, or this executive canceled our meeting, or whatever it is, right? It can feel like crap.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you elevate your perception of what you're in it for, then you realize that maybe it's a longer game. For me, it's always about grounding and being a servant, right? My job is not to lead their work. They've got creative directors to do that. They've got executive directors to do that. My job is to be an ear and to see these macro patterns that help us bring better product to market, that drive efficiency across the business. I know it sounds like a huge team, but we're actually one of the smallest teams at the company that sees the breadth of work that we do. Right? You imagine, like, the developers, it's thousands, and everybody's super distributed. And so we're one of the only centralized teams, even though we work in a very kind of deployed, on the ground manner. And that is this opportunity to say, hey, this way that we're presenting 3 options for an auto insurance quote over here is the way we should present 3 options for a life insurance quote over here. Maybe, with context and all of those things. But I can't tell you how many times I run into separate initiatives that should just be smashed together. So we're helping in that way. It is, right? The value of design is not necessarily the screens or the pixels. It's this intentionality. And the one thing that I love about this company is you don't have to sell being member focused. It's what we call our customers. They're members. And so you don't have to sell being member focused, and that is a real gift. But you do have to talk about how to do it, because intention's not enough. And so what is the practice and the process that we're bringing to bear every single day in order to make sure that that's actually true?
So we're gonna jump a little to your mentors and who you kind of follow. Who were the people in your life earlier on that really impacted you to make the decisions you made, to make the jumps you made, the confidence you made, the woman you're becoming, or are, whatever. The woman you're still growing into.
We're always becoming.
That's right. So tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, original, I definitely have to, my mom. And
oh, mama.
There's things, from when I was in preschool and the first time I came home and had a bully story, and she was like, it's up to you to not play victim. You decide how you handle this. Have empathy, because she's just scared you won't be her friend. And then tell her you won't be her friend if she keeps treating you this way. And patted me on my back and sent me back out there to deal with it myself. And that was, just so indicative of the way that she raised me. And that continued throughout my life. And we've had tons of issues, lots of challenges, but I think that I have seen through age how many of her original lessons are still serving me today. And I really appreciate that. In terms of mentorship, I've had many over the years. I think from Jeff Williams, who was a creative director at Frog, to Doreen Lorenzo, to my first dev manager at True, who was this amazing woman, Jenny Hoff, that I really looked up to, and she was the only other woman in the department except for me. And
You know?
but I think that where people get hung up on mentorship is they're waiting for a Yoda, right? They want
Right.
this one person that can be all things to them.
There is no tribe.
That doesn't exist.
Right.
No one's going to be all things to you,
Right.
and no one's going to help, create your path and tell you exactly what the next best step
Life
is.
has to be just like Star Wars, or there is no life.
So I'm really big. I'll take Star Wars, but
We said Yoda. You started it.
No, I gotta go back then. If we're gonna go sci-fi on it,
We'll go somewhere else.
Jean-Luc Picard on leadership.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, I gotta shave my head then,
He's
though it's halfway there.
He's
But
so amazing. So amazing. No, I mean, I was a Star Trek junkie as a kid, and
the original, so that he was what?
He's Next Generation.
He was Next Generation.
Not Kirk. Kirk's a cowboy and an asshole. I do not respect him as a leader.
See, my parents grew up with that guy. That was their Game of Thrones growing up. Like, they went and would turn their TV on and wait for those episodes, and they would have people over. That just is amazing for me. And you look at it now and you're like, wow, the quality is what it is. But back then, 60s, 70s, whatever the hell it was, it's amazing.
That was Star Trek Next Generation for me.
Yeah. I watched that a lot with you too.
So much of it was pretty cerebral. It wasn't always, each episode wasn't about adventure. Anyway, I digress.
That's fine.
Back
to Star Wars.
I believe so much in this idea of verse mentorship, or topical mentorship, or time box mentorship.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things I talk a lot about with folks today is don't try to find your be all of everything, right? Do lots of bursts. And then out of that, you might figure out your board of directors.
Right.
And,
that's a cool way to put it.
And some of them will stick and some of them won't, and some of them will be long spans and you only talk to them once a year, but that still counts.
Right.
And so I think that the frame that we have, that so many of us have when we're young around mentorship, it doesn't serve us.
Right.
And so I think shifting that is a really healthy thing.
I have a godfather, Morris Satowski, who's a pro golfer. And he just wrapped up on the Champions Tour a handful of years ago. Amazing putter, amazing golfer. He did really well. And I was unbelievably fortunate enough to have him as not only a godfather, but as a golf instructor, which I did not take advantage of. I was an asshole. I loved when he and I would go out to the range, but I was at a place in my life when I was much younger where I was learning at school, I was doing things, the interest was there. And I think after the lesson was done, I was like, wow, all of these new tools that I've just acquired. But during it, it's just like, I just want to do something. I want to play Nintendo. I want to do something else, right? But one of the things that stuck with me the most to this day, and I want to thank him 100% on this, and he'll see this video and I love him to death, is I was out on the driving range with him and I was 15, 16 years old, I don't know. And I was getting mad. Just scuffing it or not hitting it well, just being a little baby about it. And this is a professional golfer next to me. And he's like, why are you getting mad? I'm like, well, I suck. I'm not hitting it well. I'm slicing, fading, whatever. And he's like, well, are you out here 4, 5, 6 hours a day practicing? Looking at your swing? Are you putting 1,000 balls a week or whatever number? Are you chipping around the greens? Are you hitting your driver? Are you doing all of these things in order to better your game? No. You don't have the right to be upset.
Yeah. It's a good reframe. 20
years have gone by and I have yet to not reflect on that comment when I'm learning something new.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. It's like you don't have the right to get all pissy about it
unless you work. It's so in our world, right? It's so relevant because so many of us are looking at that outcome.
Yeah.
And guess what? Work's supposed to feel like work.
Right.
Yes, you should be inspired. Yes, you should be engaged. Yes, you should be doing something that is meaningful to you. But there are times it's always going to suck.
Yeah.
And your job is to push through that such that you can see those benefits. And if you're not willing to push through that, then don't demand the benefits.
Right. we're in a very interesting climate right now.
Yeah.
A lot has happened in the past few years, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, with a lot of the Me Too and a lot of the meatier things happening, a lot of the heavier news elements happening. But before that, obviously, it's always been a problem or an issue, problem, issue, whatever. Dating back to clubbing you over the head and throwing you over my shoulder. That's horrible. Anyways, that's where it started, right? No, I'm just kidding.
It has always been a problem. One of the ways that I joke, I personally judged this across my career,
right,
is when I was younger, I was always the only person ever in the bathroom.
Right. The bathroom test.
I could sing, I could hang out in there, just kind of like, it was a place to relax.
Sorry. My beard just like shot me in the face. Keep going. keep going.
And now, like, no, the stalls are full. The
Right.
bathroom's busy. It's delightful. So every once in a while you gotta wait.
Right.
Most of my life, I will never wait in the line or the bathroom. But at work, I'm always kind of like, yes.
Right.
The bathroom's full. The sign. Progress.
That is the funniest, like, the bathroom test. If you go to a company, so go to your company, everyone. Go to the bathroom. Well, if you're a woman, go to your bathroom, see what's going on. And if you're in there by yourself, then...
Especially at like an executive offsite or a leadership meeting, and the bathroom's still busy,
yeah,
you should feel proud.
That's amazing.
So I'll tell you, one of my ways dealing with this when I was early on in my career, as with every single woman ever, especially in tech, right? I've dealt with things.
Yeah.
We all have. And what I came to realize is that my early coping mechanisms weren't enough as I became a leader. So my early coping mechanism was basically forgetting that I was a woman.
Right.
And bringing my whole self, and anytime that I felt like I rubbed up against something that was because I was a woman, I gave it no second thought and I just pushed through whatever that was. And that doesn't mean that I didn't interact with things, right? I had a client at one point, I was asked off the project because he couldn't deal with a woman with opinions. And pretty much like his whole team said so. And
bold, sir. Very bold.
There's been plenty of moments, but my way of, right, I was like, good, I would rather not work on your project also.
Yeah.
And in that case, I had other work to go on to, and that was
Sure.
great. But one of the things I've realized as I've come into more of a leadership position is that a narrative of just ignore it definitely doesn't work.
Yeah.
Both on my part as a leader and to give other people as advice. And I think the thing is that, I try to take a bit more of a macro view of whether it's like, yes, my particular, flavor is that I am a woman. We're not really a minority. We're half the population. But whatever that experience is that someone's having that has made them be ignored, made them feel unimportant, made them, whether it could just be an introvert, could be that they're lacking some particular ability,
Yeah.
could be that they're African American, could be that they're some other nationality, whatever that is that has made you feel disenfranchised. It is important for me to be able to act as an advocate. For the longest time, I was of the mindset of, if I just don't give it energy, it doesn't have my energy.
Mm.
And now what I realize is I must very intentionally give it energy, because it's my job to make space.
Yeah.
It's my job to seek diversity. It's my job to make sure the funnel is broad enough. It's my job to proactively drive this, because without that, the pace of change is just crap.
Yeah.
It's just not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so the things that worked for me to overcome personally aren't what scales. I've been talking more macro.
Yeah.
But I think you're talking about like an individual who's having some kind of challenge. What's
Yes.
advice for them personally?
What do they need to do?
I think number one is find your advocates because they already exist within your organization. Number two is, yes, you should focus on it and definitely call out injustice where it exists. But at the same time, if say you're at a meeting table and you're really aware of the fact that you're the only woman in this meeting, you don't need to make some joke about it. You don't need to feel like you need to shut up because of it. Guess what? Nobody else realizes that you're the only woman in this room.
Right.
And so in that particular instance, it is your job to remove that as an impediment.
Yeah.
And to bring whatever you think is right to that session for that context. And then look at the patterns. And once you see patterns of what is driving success across any of your peers, have open conversation with a mentor, with a manager around how you can create more awareness. One of the things that I suffered from early on was lack of self-advocacy. Designers are already like, oh, you noticed my work, thank you. And then you know, so many women are also bred to be like, oh, demure, you noticed me.
Right.
And between the two things, I remember there was a manager once, and I took all this pride in being low maintenance. And he, you know, gave me this positive reinforcement of like, you're no trouble, I don't have to worry about you. I took stock at the end of the year. We had spent a total of 5 minutes together over the course of the year.
Whoa.
And as such, I got passed up on a round of promotions that everyone else who was in management said, yeah, you were probably ready then. And so I do think that owning some of the structure, right? If you've got a one-on-one and you're just laying back in the cut and waiting for your manager to drive the conversation, no, I still go to every one-on-one with a list.
Yeah.
And if I find that they're degrading into just status updates and conversation, I bring up a topic.
Yeah.
Let's talk about my growth. Let's talk about what I'm really doing well right now. I need some constructive feedback. Never take great job as enough.
Yeah.
And you should feel safe or bold. Maybe safety's overrated, right? Feel bold enough to give that feedback. I need this from you. So many managers are figuring out as they go too. And so by demanding what you need in order to feel safe, in order to grow, in order to feel heard, that's their job. And you get to hold them accountable to their job as much as they get to hold you accountable to yours.
What excites you about design right now?
Ooh, good one. So much. We're seeing a new era of tools that's creating another layer, another kind of like round of productivity and integrating design into processes better. So that is kind of just like a foundational layer of what excites me. Definitely the one that I love to geek out on is design and artificial intelligence. I actually helped
design and AI.
Yeah, design and AI. And so many people on this topic jump straight to like design being replaced by AI and artificially driven layouts, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yes, eventually that's gonna happen and some of our production aspects will be taken over, but I'm not concerned with that.
Great.
The one that is interesting to me is designers being really empowered to understand how artificial intelligence driven or powered features and functions can manifest. And we need to take more ownership of knowing what the technology, right? Technology in so many cases is our medium.
Yeah.
And it's all of our responsibility to know our medium. And so artificial intelligence is this much more now almost consistently present portion of that medium. And so whether it's how the algorithm underneath the covers is driving this recommendation or what concept could I introduce that would be feasible with the data set we have, or how can I imagine something that would really impact the members based on the research I've done that maybe the AI team or the data team wouldn't even think of on their own. And today, for far too often, I feel like designers are treating that as this like magic black box.
Right.
It's not magic black box. And so often, even basic fundamental algorithms can get you a lot of the way to where we want to go. And you really only need artificial intelligence in learning when you're macro data sets and better trying to find those bigger patterns over time.
Yeah.
So this is one that I'm super geeky about and very excited.
Geeky's good.
And I think that we've only scratched the surface as designers around being a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the aspect that I find the most interesting is we fundamentally know what React Web Services are capable of, what the iPhone can do.
Yeah.
And so we are able to use, I remember when location awareness first came on the market. And we were like, well, and everybody's concepts for like the first year were all like, and then we know your location, so we tell you this, and we know this, so we tell you that.
And now we're just eating it up. And then now we're like, I don't want that anymore.
Well, but now imagine.
Not that we have a choice.
1,000 other factors that can drive context.
Yeah.
And that being dynamically driven. And right now, most designers are just fast following Google or other competitors to say, well, something like this.
Right.
The thing that I'm enjoying is how designers are having to expand their skill set. Yeah. And I remember early on, right, there was mobile designers and they were really specialized. And now these days, it's kind of like everyone has some level of mobile experience and some people still rock it harder than others.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we're all going to be with some of these other specialties. There'll be specialties first, and then we all have to have some baseline of those capabilities to design in those mediums.
Yeah.
And the challenge is, as we explore them at scale, how do we make something that is usable because the affordances are different or the affordances aren't there? And we've had so much time to normalize on what the right indicators are on the screen.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take us a while to normalize on what these things are. I mean, as much as I love voice interaction, you still find the majority of people using like 2 or 3 skills because it's only the ones they can remember and it's not conversational yet. But as artificial intelligence pushes further into that space, not just to do the voice recognition, but to do the learning of that response and that conversational aspect, right? That's the difference between Alexa and Google Home. Google Home can have a conversation, Alexa you just speak to.
Right.
And I think we're going to continue to see those next leaps until we actually live in Star Trek. All the way back to the beginning.
Yes. I mean, that's what's so funny to me is you see these shows back in the 60s, 70s, even like your Metropolis or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Your old movies.
30s?
It's like teens or 20s, wasn't it? That's an old
20s,
one.
I think.
Anyways,
yes.
Old movie. They're pushing the boundaries of sci-fi. You're looking at, more recently, obviously, your Star Treks in the 60s, 70s, where giant screens, flip phones, communicators. Let's move away from the tasers and stuff. Well, we have tasers and firearms, but it's just such a funny thing to see sci-fi coming to life. And we're at that age now where there's such a merger of technologies. Now we're not in space shuttles going to wherever the hell we want. We're not doing these unfeasible things, but from a software standpoint, there's so much happening now.
But the velocity of change has continuously accelerated, and at the current trajectory will continue to accelerate.
Yeah.
And so how do we as designers make sure that we don't lose our humanity through that process?
Right.
And that we're bringing the research and human-centered focus that we can add to that conversation to bear, as and not just pushing technology for technology's sake.
Yeah.
Is it really delivering value? Is it changing people's lives for the better?
Yep.
How are we making sure that we're witnessing and compensating for the unintended side effects?
Yeah.
Right. And we already see that in little tiny ways, right? Like app time tracking and Netflix asking, "Are you sure are you still watching? Yep. Are you sure you want to be still watching?"
Nope. But I am. Stranger Things, absolutely.
And so I think that each of us have this responsibility to bring to our day-to-day work
Yeah.
What is that human aspect? Because as technology continues to progress at pace, we're going to have fewer and fewer chances to change that curve.
Yeah.
So we need to build in the human controls and that human element along the way.
Yeah. What's funny to me is this is all a simulation and none of this matters. We're being controlled, but no. No, I mean, it's funny that Elon Musk was asked that. I don't know if you saw that talk.
I missed that one, but
They asked him basically bluntly if we're living in a simulation, what are the chances of it happening?
It is statistically feasible.
And looking at gaming back in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, whatever, depending on where you want to start, the actual commercial gaming and how it's advanced and how we're controlling little digital people and telling their stories and living their stories. Fast forward another 30 years, 50 years, 100, 200 years.
And that's why
Terrifying.
It's important to get outside and put your feet in the grass.
That's right.
And hug your family and appreciate the air.
Yep.
And taste a fresh tomato.
The ones and zeros tomato, yes.
If it's a game, at least enjoy it.
Exactly.
And if it's not, let's not mess it up too bad.
All right. I think we're good. Thank you so much for being here. You've been incredible.
Thank you.
One more cheers.
Yes.
Thank you so
for
much.
the time together.
Absolutely. This has been great.